So today is the 25th of April, 2020. I went to the Austin State Capitol for the Open America and Open Texas rally. While I was there, I spoke with several different individuals. I've posted the interview in regards to Owen Schroyer, I apologize, of Infowars.com in the war room. And I'll do a separate video on that. And I also interviewed a few other people, including Marta Doss's daughter, and another individual that I have seen a few times at different pro-Trump rallies, with I think it's a British accent, if I'm not mistaken. And so, I had, and you can look at my YouTube video, YouTube channel, Reverend MeeLing, the official videos, you'll see that. So, I had met several people that I had seen before, and then some people that I had not, of course. One of the couples that I had met, both of them, the female and the male, into music, but the male, former Marine. Although, once a Marine, always a Marine. And I had given him and his wife a copy of this, as well as that, in reference to my Medal of Honor art project. And our talk had gone in various directions, from spiritual to military to patriotism to immunizations, all sorts of things all over the map. But another aspect we discussed was in reference to the Twin Tower attacks on 9/11/2001. I have completed prior videos in reference to, as well as what I had written, and I had not discussed in a major sort of way in comparison to what I wrote in Finding a Silver Lining. Some finding the silver lining, but mainly Finding a Silver Lining by Susan MeeLing. In reference to the World Trade Center, I have discussed in prior Reverend MeeLing YouTube channel videos about a dream I had. And it was an evolving dream because of the amount of information for me to see. And as a child, to have a dream in that way, I mean, my biological parents made fun of me for dreaming that. And they were like, they told me, you're just a child, you know, you've had to have seen something. No. Remember, I'm not allowed to watch anything above a G rating at that time still. And then, you know, even at my babysitter's house, Sony and Joe, or Sonia and Jose, they didn't really, there were times that I had been able to see things when Joe or Jose was at the house, but not when Sonny was. Sonny didn't, or Sonia did not allow that at all. She stuck to that G rating. And so when I was older, which by the way was after the 93 attacks, was when the first time I had seen something that was not G rated. At Sony's And so there was no basic aspect for me to go off of, realistically. That time I had, cartoons. And while they had cable, it was Nickelodeon that, we usually watched back then. And, we weren't even allowed to watch MTV at Sonny and Sonia's house, or Sonny or Sonia, Joe or Jose's house. Just wasn't allowed. Even when it came to David and Liza's room, that was not allowed. I was allowed to play the video games, but the video games were not at all anything similar in any way, in any shape, or in any form of what I dreamt. So in reference to that, for those of you who have not seen my prior official videos, have not read my book, Finding a Silver Lining in Specific, my dream, which I could smell fertilizer, okay, and I saw a white, unmarked van. I still don't know the details, by the way. I still have not researched the 93 attack, by the way. I'm sure that I heard about it and read about it at some point before my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000, but not since after waking up, okay? So unmarked van, the only windows were the passenger and front windshield, as well as the two windows in the back, cargo van style, a little dirty, it wasn't freshly clean. There's like a layer of dust, dirt on it, and this is in my dream, mind you, and then a pungent smell that almost had another scent, and not fully fertilizer, but fully, like, for me, I could tell there was fertilizer in there because of gardening. The back axle for the rear wheels were lower than the front. The reverse of Dakota, my biological mother's favorite dog, by the way. Irony. About that color of a van. Irony. Peekapoo. Pekingese poodle, I think that was the mix. Ugly dog. Anyway. But at the same time in the dream, the first time I had that dream nightmare, realistically. It was a dream because I saw the ending, but it was the nightmare in the beginning. And there was the van, it went into the parking garage and just kind of drove around in a spiral sort of way, downward. And then there was an explosion, and then there were airplanes. And they flew in to the towers at the exact same time. Now, if that is more of a metaphor because of if that was what was going on planning-wise at the time, then that makes sense to me now. At that time, it was a nightmare. The first time I had that as the dream, I had seen to the end, but I could not get past that, those explosions. I couldn't get past that. I couldn't verbalize past that. I could see the good and stuff like that in the later part of the dream, but that portion was all I could verbalize before I was told, you're just being a stupid child, go to bed. Or you just, watch something and then I got in trouble for something I didn't even do. There was a conversation for watching something that I didn't watch. And I dealt with that. And that dream started when I was in 2nd grade, when I was in Miss LaPiana's class. I remember that because of Miss LaPiana. And irony of piano in that regard, for the name meaning. Anyway, for certain proportions. Anyway, so when the 93 attack occurred, it was when I was just starting to go through homeschooling, because I had come down with mono, Epstein-Barr bronchitis, Lyme's disease, and the flu, all at the same time. Ironically, my homeschool teacher was Miss LaPiana. Irony. And she asked me a lot of questions. She asked me a lot of questions just before the 93 attack. I was in 5th grade, by the way. And so I graduated elementary school from Asher Holmes Elementary in 1994, by the way. So I would answer questions, not just my homework, but the different spiritual questions she had asked. Because I had asked her a few things, and she just looked at me and she was like, Susan, that's such an adult question from a child. Well, what do you believe? Do you believe in spirituality or not? Do you believe in religion or not? And the first time I asked her that, she was just, whoa! That's a little heavy, don't you think? Just wondering. And it's not like she didn't know that I was going to Altena Presbyterian Church and stuff like that. So I did wind up telling her about the dream. And she looked at me, she's like, Susan, that's a nightmare. And I'm like, well, there's other portions to it. There's good stuff that comes a little while after. And she looked at me and she goes, what good can come from that? And I said, a lot of clearing and a lot better understanding. And she looked at me and she goes, what type of understanding could come from that? Importance? Acceptance? Truth? Genuinity? Love? Faith? Appreciation? Reality? The removing of a veil? Taking away all illusions? Peace? Balance? And she looked at me and she's like, Susan, that is a lot for a little girl to talk to me about. Well, you know, I don't know what to tell you. I'm just wondering, what is your opinion on that? You're a teacher. You're smart. And she just looked at me just like, oh my God, Susan, that is special. and then a few weeks later, by the way, she started teaching me just before the Christmas break at home, because I had been out of school that long. And the only thing that I read recently, meaning in 2019, when I looked up a little bit, was that it happened in February of 1993. She asked me a whole bunch more questions. It was an interesting dichotomy. I don't deny that. And at one point in time, she had asked, it was about a few weeks before I went back to school, and she had asked what I had thought of Mr. Art, the art teacher. That was literally his name, Mr. Art. I was like, oh, he is fantastic. I really like him. He's so vibrant. And she's like, oh, is that the way you're going to describe him? Yes. Colors. So vibrant. So fun. So sweet. And she's just, oh my God. Oh, what? He is. I mean, not just because he's an art teacher. I mean, she's like, you have no idea. No idea about what? She's just like, no, just, do you understand what Mr. Art, what? He's fantastic. He's fabulous. He's so fantastically fabulous. And she's just, okay, you know what? All right. Let's get to class. Oh, okay. What are we going to do? I think he might have been gay. It's a little late for me to figure that out. That, I think he might have been. He possibly could have been. Not just because he did art. That's nothing to do with it. But I think he might have been. It's a little late for me to figure that out. That was elementary school, by the way. Think he might have been gay. That might be why she was so shocked when I said he is fantastic and fabulous. Great personality. I mean, just so sweet and just funny and attitude and just anyway. Moving forward into the time of 2001, and I was dealing with not just issues as far as my now dead ex-husband, but being pregnant, being a mom, doing everything that I could to make sure my son was safe. Learning to try to deal with my headaches and my migraines, attempting to accept the knowledge and the comprehension that at one point in time I was able to do college algebra with trigonometry and calculus like that. I didn't need to write all the stuff out. I could do it in my head and be done. And I couldn't understand why that was gone. That was my capabilities of working with computers before my head injury. Those who went to Asher Holmes Elementary School when I was growing up in New Jersey know we were introduced to computers really early and gone. What? Why won't it? What is it doing? You have to look at the monitor. Oh, sure, Marksberry, just be smart about computers. That was in 2000, mind you, but nonetheless. Yep. So when 9/11 occurred, I spoke. I said a prayer out loud. Usually when I pray, I am quiet. I don't usually say my prayers out loud. Ritual is different in certain ways, but not. And when I specifically mean ritual, I mean going through lighting the candles, calling the coroners, all that sort of stuff. That is usually out loud. Fantasizing, that's not necessarily ritual, that's just Anyway, that's different. Nonetheless, good thoughts though. Anyway, as far as actual ritual and prayer, ritual, speak out loud. Prayer, I just pray. That's how I am. When my now dead ex-husband came into the townhouse, because we were living at Songbird Apartments at the time, he had startled me. I woke up and, what are you doing back from school? And don't you know what occurred? The TV turned on. I don't know if that was by chance. I don't know if that was NSA stuff. Like, I'm not trying to sound all weird on that. I don't know. But the TV turned on. Just to see the second plane go in. Oh. Mind you, I did not remember that particular portion of the dream. And I prayed out loud. My prayers just came out. I hope that there are people that can figure out how to land all of the airplanes. Just get the ones that have the least amount of fuel grounded first. The ones who have a little bit more, can wait, taxi them wherever they need to. Hopefully nobody has to shoot anything out of the sky, but if they do, hopefully it's not a big deal. It's over an area that is not a problem, and that's all I could say. Hopefully they'll be able to, if there's anybody that can't get the plane to ground, that they're able to call their loved ones before knowing what to do to prevent any further damage. Hopefully, and I just went down a whole bunch of different ideas. Whatever you believe spiritually, this feeling out of my back, just kind of shot in every which direction. And, you can call them wings, whatever. And, then I looked over and saw my son, who was born on the 2nd of September in 2001. Literally 7 days. Or 9 days. Whatever. And then a whole bunch of other words in regards to every age. From in regards to females who were pregnant, to young children, to adolescents, teenagers, adults of every age, every possible way. And my now dead ex-husband had a few words before a conversation. And then cleaned myself up. Did what I could do, of course, to keep my son safe. And cleaned myself up in the shower. And as he continued to yell at me, said, I gotta go to the office. Just gotta go to the office. And there was a gateway computer that was in the bedroom. And I know that there was a webcam. Now, at that time, I didn't know. Finished getting ready. Got my son taken care of. Went over to across the parking lot because literally my townhouse that I was in was across the parking lot from the front office. And so walked across with James in the car seat and saw the females in the office just staring at the television. And by that time they had told me that a plane had gone. I don't remember whether it was Flight 93 or if it was the Pentagon that had been hit, and in the Army side. And the feeling in my back had changed a little bit, and I've said prior, I put in writing prior, I discussed things with the tech sergeant from the Air Force and gave him a bunch of ideas to assist certain things. And then my son got sick a few days later. Took him into the hospital at Lackland Air Force Base. And I was on post for a week. Because my son was hospitalized. So the military could ask a bunch of questions, I guess. That's one way to put it. And then, so in reference to today's discussion, my question, I guess is the way to put it, the materials that were utilized to repair, and the words I used was a Band-Aid in regards to the 93 attack. Band-Aid for the tower that had the van with the fertilizer in it. Were those materials that were utilized for that Band-Aid compatible for the structure to repair the actual building? I'm sure that they were strong enough. I'm sure that in certain regards that they were up to safety code in different ways. But what era, as far as what decade, were the Twin Towers built? Were they built with all of the exact same materials? In both buildings, by the way. Was there structural damage to the other nearby buildings when the explosion occurred? Was there any supersonic boom that the frequencies had caused issues for the nearby buildings, that it was unknown what was done to the joints, the foundation, like the actual foundation, what goes underneath, that sort of stuff. For the people who want to say that the government was a part of it, well, the government did what they could to repair that. I don't doubt that. But as far as them wanting to actually do that, I have an issue believing that. Were know, if it was a mainly wooden structure and steel wasn't necessarily used in the same way, what type of steel was it? Was it able to be welded where the seam actually was not a breaking point? You know, I'm sure there are people in construction that could explain that far better than I. The bolts that were utilized, were they of the proper grade and weight for that particular building? And then not forgetting that what were the size of people, like what was the average height, what was the average weight of individuals when the towers were originally built? Did they take into consideration the way they do when it comes to submarines and boats in the ocean when sinking ships? Do they do that? Did they do that back then in the 1993 time frame? Did they do that back when they originally built the buildings? Or did it just get built to whatever code that they could think of at the time? Because if you think about, now, not that I've been in a submarine, but I would guesstimate they're kind of certain, whatever. How many guys nowadays have to duck in comparison to back when the submarines were first built? Same thing with naval ships and cruise liners and so on and so forth. How much did they have to look at in the more modern times in comparison to the times that they were built? So in regards to the day of 9/11 and the people with the different theories and stuff, what was actually used? Do you still have the blueprints? Do you have not only the blueprints, but do you have the specific materials that were used? Are those companies still in business? Can those companies give that? If that is not a possibility, then the aspects of the government specifically being involved is kind of difficult. And then, you know, in regards to the people that the amount of people over the years that I have tried to explain, be more respectful to law enforcement. Be more respectful to military guys, because you don't know what they have had to deal with. And I'm not just talking about the war aspect. I'm talking about the day, and I was talking about, but not in specific, the day of. How many National Guard were on go? How many local police officers, local fire departments, local just whoever that could not at that time actually speak about going to international airports or any airport, however they had to land the planes? And then, if there were more that were involved, and because, why, you know, obviously the planes were landed, there was the news reports of the people being stuck in the airports, right? I can't be the only person that remembers that. And so, how many people that were in airplanes didn't leave the airplanes in a normal sort of way? How many law enforcement, National Guard, Fire Department, EMS of each local area have to see things that their jobs were not, that wasn't in the job description. That wasn't what they had signed up for. How many guys, and not being sexist, how many guys were called on duty, had to go, whether U.S. Marshals, CIA, because International Airport, you know, FBI, and you could be a veteran, retired, whatever. Look at COVID-19 as an example. You got experience, contact. So all these years that I've said, be more respectful. You don't know what they have seen, you don't know what they have experienced. Just be grateful that they have done what they have done and where they could. Those individuals, you know, for example, let's say hypothetically, just in a hypothetical way, that when some of the airplanes landed, and they landed properly, let's say hypothetically, some of the airplanes taxied to where they were taxied to. But since I'm in the state of Texas, let's use the state of Texas as an example. So that was September. All year round in the state of Texas, it's hot. There are times when it's cooler, but it's usually, rarely, ever below 32 degrees. Rarely in anywhere below Belton. Usually you don't see snow. It's once in a couple of years or decades before it snows. So what's the average temperature in September? And what if, hypothetically, there were other plans? What if, hypothetically, when those individuals didn't get their cue? What if, hypothetically, when law enforcement or whomever went to those particular planes, didn't have somebody open the door from the inside, and law enforcement hypothetically had to open the doors from the outside? How many hours did that take? I have told many people, be more respectful. Not just because you don't want to know what martial law is like. Not just because of what occurred in reference to my daughter and my son. Not just because of what I saw when I was in medical hold. Not just because of what I saw in regards to certain aspects of dealing with other aspects for the aftermath of my dead ex-husband's issues in regards to that. Not just because of a lot of other things. Not just because I was born and raised in New Jersey, in certain ways because of my memory issues. So, you know, what if it wasn't just simply going off of the materials that were known? What was actually the overall, and were there ever any patches in between? Before the 93 attack, by the way. Were there any repairs? Were there any floors that needed a repair, but not necessarily the structure? And as far as the people, the city of New York and the surrounding areas nearby, as well as the people that traveled, not forgetting Washington, D.C. and Maryland, the state of New Jersey, Delaware, New Hampshire, Vermont, Pennsylvania, which a lot of those individuals travel either to or through New York and or New Jersey and or Maryland and or Delaware and or Washington, D.C. Not forgetting Virginia and North and South Carolina, of course, because of their close vicinity to Washington, D.C. So the equivalent of the East Coast for the most part. Not saying that Maine and Florida or Alabama and Georgia didn't see certain things, but in comparison to that middle central section, and West Virginia, because there's Virginia and West Virginia, what was seen but not seen? So for all of the people that I had known over the years, more specifically closer to the time of 2001, who wanted, and usually civilians, who wanted to say, oh, no, don't care. I'd never understood how they could say they didn't care. Maybe it was because they didn't have any connection points, I guess, maybe. I don't know. But, like for example, Christine of the Jade Wolf Coven. Oh, I saw a Michael Moore documentary. Okay. What if he wasn't able to report everything in his documentary? What if the information in the documentary was only what he was allowed to report at that time? No, he only does like everything. You don't know Michael Moore. That her words. I was like, I don't know if I met him or not. I could have, I could not. I don't know. Doesn't really matter. Doesn't change the fact that how much footage. I mean, at that time, cell phones were getting more and more advanced a lot quicker. How many people had their video cameras in the car in comparison to the convenience nowadays of a cell phone? Not many, I'm sure. How many had cameras? Not nearly as many, I'm sure. Which, in certain regards, I'll be honest, as I can only be honest, I'm glad. I'm glad that there was a limited amount of cameras at that time. I'll tell you why. I'm glad because the footage that did go in, those families, those friends of the people that were jumping, were the 9/11 documentary guys with the only footage in the interior portion of the tower had been tasteful enough to not show certain things. To be respectful of the families and friends of not just the individual themselves. Can that truthfully be said in regards to if just everybody had the same access that they do now? How many more? I mean, yes, social media, it's great. Freedom of expression, freedom of speech, all that sort of stuff. I don't personally agree with groups like Antifa, where, they go and I believe in the freedom of expression. I don't deny that. But when you are planning to cause harm, and then you follow through with it, there's a point where that pattern of behavior has to be considered as an issue. I cannot be the only person who sees stuff like that in that way. Again, I don't believe in denying people their freedom of expression. But as I've given a reference before, you cannot yell certain words in an airport. That is not freedom of expression, that is not freedom of speech. Especially if it is to incite panic on purpose. Not in a warning way, not in a, attempt to be helpful way, but in a way to simply just cause chaos because of the possibilities. That is a problem, in my opinion. I don't disagree with people being able to say, I don't like so-and-so, for if you want to express your racism, your bigotry, your etc., that is your choice, that is your freedom of expression, that is your constitutional right. But it is everybody else's constitutional right in return to express their opinions as well. The threatening aspects, though, that's different. Going. And it's an extremely thin and fine line. I do not deny that. However, the need for history is of importance. There's no denying that. But when there is the purposeful incitement to cause problems, that is an issue that needs to be looked into, not to restrict individuals, but to evaluate for safety. And I will give myself and my Medal of Honor art project as an example. As much as I would like to continue working on my Medal of Honor art project where I can go and do all that stuff, because of what occurred in regards to specifically, yes, the state of Montana in 2000, I think it was 2017, but I could have accidentally written 2016 in reference to the traffic issue. If that was done purposefully, which I have a feeling hypothetically it was, I cannot, in good conscience, put people at risk in that way. Yes, people take risks every day when driving, going anywhere. However, to know that there are individuals that would purposefully do something like that until the aspects of justice are taken care of to ensure, yes, within reason, a certain amount of safety because of what occurred in that regard. I do not have a problem with traffic. I mean, I do, but not in a way that was done because of the red Hyundai car, but in reference to just every day. I mean, again, using myself as an example, my now dead ex-husband, when he was alive, he had said, well, you being a part, which I found out had been because Christine and Jamie of the Jade Wolf Coven had tattletaled on me to my now dead ex-husband and told him that I had gotten involved with the BDSM community. And it was one of those, isn't that the pot calling the kettle black? But okay. However, his thing was, well, you could be attacked. You are accurate. But I could be attacked going anywhere. Not that I want to. I don't want that. But the likelihood of that occurring, probably similar in certain regards. And with my experience, I've had multiple aspects where I've been attacked. Whether it was physically, more so by him, the irony on that, but verbally, where I was cornered and I went to a country club for a country music concert and I was cornered. Albeit he was dead by then. But, you know, I mean, as an example, I went to a country music concert. Of all places, and I did not think that that would be an issue. And yet, these situations that occurred that did, as far as Kevin and the others, there is that reality. And so, I've been verbally attacked in reference to modeling. The aspects of Model Mayhem, irony of the name for that website, in regards of posting in the public forum. Again, he was dead by that time. However, as an example, in regards to myself being attacked. I don't want that. Nobody, I think, genuinely wants to be attacked if it can be avoided. But there are certain things that I chose to express myself. I chose to ask for help, knowing that I didn't know what to do in that regard. You know, who, does anybody have any recommendations of who I should contact to try to get my daughter help, to try to make sure my son is better taken care of, to make sure that the health care for them is okay, and at the exact same time, active duty National Guard reservist veterans and your immediate dependents, as well as your family. While I can't fix this on my own, do what you can to make sure yours are taken care of, as well as civilians. Because civilian, at that time I still, and I have issues at this point accepting certain regards. Yes, I know by technicalities I am a veteran. However, there is that aspect. I did not graduate basic training. So that's the double-edged sword dichotomy on that. I don't look like someone who's been in. And at the age, I was born in 1982. The amount of individuals that came at me, oh, you don't look like, yeah, no, I don't. Tell me something I don't know. You don't look like you're injured. Yeah, I know. But I've dealt with, like, the after effects of my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000. Just because and this is not to be rude or mean towards any of the guys, not being sexist, that have lost, limbs because of what they've gone through and survived and have been able to have the ability to do things, with the development of different advances in this day and age. But I also am not the only person who hasn't lost a limb, or multiple, that doesn't look like a, however you want to term that still deals with stuff. There are plenty of guys, I'm sure, that have not lost a limb. then again, I also don't see things the exact same way as other people. There is that cutie patootie Marine. I've had to focus, and I am not trying to sound rude. So, with respect to the cutie patootie Marine, uh, Joseph Jones, like, it is not to be rude. I've had to force myself to see in that regard. And it is to this, not that I've done it that often, I don't want to come across as creepy. But I don't deny it though. I have had to look and just, so, okay, oh, I see legs. and I've seen videos of different times when he was in the hospital at Walter Reed, and it's just, okay, he's shorter, still see legs. I know that sounds weird. It probably, at least I would guesstimate it does. In my thoughts, it comes across as weird. I just don't see things the way some people do, I guess. And so, it's not to be rude. I don't see that way. I see the person. I see who they are. You know, probably sounds really weird. It's kind of similar to the way where I've tried to explain to people. When I grew up in New Jersey, I did not see the different races. I was told. I was literally told that, you know, so-and-so was this ethnic background, and so-and-so was this ethnic background, and so-and-so was this ethnic background. Okay. How do you not see that? Looks like a human being to me. Last I checked, like top to bottom, bottom to top, looks like a human being. And realistically, I guess the best example pre-head injury for that would be at Crystal Lake South. When Nick Robinson, Joy Hoover's boyfriend at the time, used the N-word, and it was, "What did you call me? What'd you say?" And everybody in it was called the pit, with the common area, just stopped. And not because, by the way, not because Nick had used the N-word. None of them that were in the immediate vicinity, none of them were surprised by him using that word, by the way. But because I had said, "What did you call me?" and was ready to throw down. And then, you know, he repeated it. I've completed a video or whatever prior. And what? What? And then he literally had to say, "The person behind you." What? And then he had to say, you know, AJ's black. He has a black backpack. I don't know why. It doesn't matter. Why'd you say that word? And then beat him up. Not AJ. Nick. I beat up Nick Robinson. Oh, I did. I would have done worse. That teacher didn't. You know. Susan, stop beating Nick up. I guess by technicalities. Okay. technically I was beating Nick down. But by technicalities, though I understood, so fine, by technicalities. But though realistically, by technicalities, that teacher said stop beating Nick up. And Nick was on the ground, and I was punching downward. By technicalities, I could have continued punching. Technically. I have a feeling there are some lawyers who might be able to agree with that. That'd be like, it's a gray area, though I was not punching upward. I was not doing uppercuts. He was on the ground. Technically. Just throw that. I know Kenny and Dale could laugh at that. Mainly because they didn't like Nick Robinson at all, or Joy Hoover, so there is that. But nonetheless, I was not punching upward. I didn't throw him. I tackled him after he pushed me. Then he was on the ground. I was not. Technically, he was punching upward. So by technicalities, technically speaking, he was attempting to beat me up while I was beating him down. So I know that this is a little bit late, you know, because I was back in like 1998. So by technicalities, it's a little late. Nonetheless, 22 years. Nonetheless, just saying, I technically was not beating him up. Just saying. I was beating him down. Technically. Just saying. I'll throw that out there. Not physically. I know 2/3 of a pond. Just you and your semantics. Yeah. Just saying, I've heard that one a time or two. So that being said, you know, in regards to the different aspects of today's rally in Austin, Texas at the state capitol, on that point alone, in regards to the aspects of 9/11 and that, I mean, realistically, what were the materials that were used throughout the years, however many decades prior to 9/11, that the towers were built? Again, did the original builders take into consideration the height and weight proportions that would change over time? Did any of the glass get changed out? And if the glass got changed out, did that change any of the structural issues? I'm sure there are construction workers with, you know, engineers and stuff that could be like, well, if this floor and only this one section was switched out, but all the others stayed the same, or, you know, on one year this was changed in one area, but, you know, in another area this or whatever, It's a lot of different things to take into consideration. And so, since I recently, and when I say recently, I actually mean like, was it yesterday or the day before, I actually looked up information, irony, of InfoWars and Alex Jones and the War Room and then, oh can't believe I did that. Anyway, I didn't know that that was stuff that they did until recently. And there is a point where it's brought up about Alex Jones saying inside job or something like that. Well, by technicalities, the structure is inside, right? The construction work of the structure for the building. It's inside. The patchwork, or the band-aids, with the exception of the windows, but not necessarily all of them, because what if they're double, triple, quadruple, quintuple, sextuple, septuple, so on and so forth, thick glass. Ends. By technicalities, that could be considered accurate depending on how you look at it, because of the internal structure from literally the foundation of the buildings all the way up to the top. And was there any additional floors added? Did the original engineering plans change from the original idea? If they did they have the same building codes as they do now? That particular portion is a rhetorical question. The answer is yes, those building codes did change. Over the years and throughout the decades. I don't know what level, but I'm sure there is somebody in the state of New York that would be able to be like, hey, look at who the President of the United States of America is. Doesn't he do construction stuff? He probably could be like, yeah, so... Back whenever he first started construction, he could probably be like, so this is what the difference is from when this building stuff and then this building stuff and this year, and for codes and aspects like that. So that's what I had to say about that. You guys have a good one, and like, share, subscribe.